finishes off in style. A magnificent strike into the crowd. India lift the World Cup after 28 years.
Well, it's time to unlock cricket in a different manner. We have had the 2020 IPL, but it's time for Team India or the Men in Blue to return to cricket, to return to action as well. We've already seen England play West Indies, England play Pakistan and Australia. Now it's time for Virat Kohli and his boys to return to action. And this time they will be taking first up Australia on what should be a mega tour, starting with 3 ODIs and 3 T20s and then laying into 4 test matches. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of HotSpot, the cricket podcast. As always, I'm your host, sports journalist and broadcaster Chetan Narula, and returning fresh from all the action in IPL is our friend and co-host, former cricketer and broadcaster Deep Dasgupta. Hello and welcome back to HotSpot. Deep, it's been a while. How was your trip to the IPL?
Oh, it was fantastic and good to be back. But yeah, 2.5 months were absolutely brilliant in that bubble. I think kudos to everyone involved to make it such a huge success, without too much of an issue. And what an experience. That's once in a lifetime experience. I hope that we don't have to face this again, the same kind of bubble. But I can tell you this, that it wasn't bad.
Well, the last time we spoke to you, you were inside a hotel room in in Abu Dhabi. Today your surroundings seem very different outside in the sun. You told me that you were having a bit of a break, which is obviously well deserved.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you went about living in those 2 months, that bio bubble that was created, obviously from a broadcast point of view. Just give us a lowdown how it was, going every day to the ground and back to the hotel room. Were you allowed any extracurricular activities at all, or what is just the hotel room and room service?
But it was straightforward. We had a few areas that we had access to, which included, which obviously got a little more relaxed as the tournament went on. So first week, obviously, it was room, and then from there, the second week was the hotel building, and then from third or fourth week onwards, there we had access to the beach and a pier there, and it was limited access, but it was access nevertheless, and it was wonderful. As far as going outside is concerned, that never happened. It was only stadium to the hotel to the stadium back to the hotel. That's that. But it was fun. It was fun because it was like 140 odd people, it family, we all got together, had the same issues, almost everyone. So yeah, it was pretty good actually.
Did you have a chance to interact with the players, or were they also totally cordoned off? Because
Yeah.
when you were going to the matches, so it was all cordoned off.
So there were 15 bubbles, and the whole purpose was to keep that bubble not to mix. Not to collide two bubbles. So players from different bubble, and each team had a different bubble, part of a different bubble. So even broadcasting wise, we had different bubbles. So the Dubai bubble was different, the Abu Dhabi bubble was different. So in total, there were 15 of them, and I think brilliant job done. Brilliant. I was just talking to someone and said, only on testings, right? BCCI must have spent around 8 to 10 CR, around $1.5 million US.
That's a fantastic figure, because it just shows that they were taking all the
Yeah,
precautions, and we had a bit of an outbreak just before the IPL started.
yeah.
But since that, everybody was like, fingers crossed, the tournament goes through without any hitches, and it did go through. Last couple of questions, because before the IPL we were talking about the number of bio bubbles. Do you see this scenario being replicated? Because the next 2 tournaments, multi-team tournaments, again, are from an Indian point of view. We have the IPL
Yeah.
2021, and we have the 2021 T20 World Cup. We're counting down to that. BCCI secretary and president, they launched that particular tournament after the IPL got over. So how do you envisage those? Again, just the last couple of questions. One, can
Yeah.
those tournaments happen in India? And B, do you see this 15 bio bubbles being replicated in India?
First of all, I think it can be done. But the other important thing that we'll have to understand is the fact that all these vaccines coming through. A lot of people are talking about within a month there'll be vaccines out and all. And if that's the case, for example, what is happening with Olympics is I think the IOC and WHO have come to an agreement where anyone who's involved with the Olympic movement or the Olympics in Japan, they'll be treated as frontline workers. So they will have access to vaccines, as in priority access to the vaccine. So maybe something like that might happen. So I think there's so many moving parts, and those parts are moving really fast right now. So I think as of now, I'm very hopeful and optimistic that obviously the England series will happen in India. It's comparatively easier, right? Because it's only two teams. But yes, IPL with 8 teams and the kind of the whole thing that is IPL. It's going to be a lot tougher. It's going to be a lot tougher. And mind you, there's another very, very important aspect that we'll have to keep in mind, which is domestic cricket. Right? We all are talking about England and IPL and everything else, but let's not forget, domestic cricket is, again, it's going to be extremely tough, but it's a very, very important aspect of Indian cricket.
In fact, my question, my lead-up question to that was going to be about Ranji Trophy, because we hadn't mentioned that.
Yeah.
Saurav Ganguly, the BCCI president, has mentioned from January onwards, probably we can have some domestic cricket, starting with perhaps the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy. You see potential in that, right? Because as we speak, there's also a Bengal T20 league which is happening in Calcutta. You've been part of helping set the whole thing up along with the Cricket Association of Bengal. Tell us about that. Do you think this is possible from a domestic point of view?
It's going to be tough because we're talking about 37 teams in domestic cricket, first class teams. So how are you going to manage that is huge. One, obviously can't be the same format as usual, right? The format has to be changed. It needs to be tweaked. You got to create bubbles in different areas of the country, and so it's not going to be easy. But I tell you this, if you can pull off domestic cricket, then you can pull off IPL as well, because I'm just thinking about the bubble and everything else and all that. And it's very important, domestic cricket. Can you imagine what 400, 500 domestic cricketers not playing cricket the whole season? I mean, you have to have domestic cricket, and that's going to be interesting how BCCI manages to do that. It's going to be tough, but I think it's doable.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how it shapes up, because it's not just India versus Australia. We're shaping up to a potential 3-4 months of cricket which would be played in the Indian backyard, or from an Indian context. You have the domestic cricket, you have England's tour of India, the dates of which are yet to come out, and of course all of that building up to the IPL, and then leading into the 21-22 season. It's going to be a hectic schedule, and of course we'll be there talking about all of it. So we should just get into the cricket side of things, the on-field action, before we move on to India, Australia. One question finally from you. What did you make of the IPL from a cricketing point of view? From I can tell you from here, from India, watching, we watched every game, every ball, because sometimes you're covering the game for so long, you're following the game for so long, you maybe miss a game here or there. But 9 months, without, or not 9 months, it was 7 months. Now it's 9 months. So 7 months without any action on television. Everybody just lapped it up, every delivery. It was fantastic to watch the IPL go through. Mumbai Indians deserved 5-time champion. So just round it up for us.
I think, first of all, again, a superhuman effort to get it, to make it happen, and make it happen as well as it has. MI from, I think, second game onwards, you could see, they were head and shoulders above the others. You could see the difference. But I must say this, apart from that, the other 7 teams, I think this was one of the most competitive IPLs. It obviously had 2 parts. The first half and the second half. Second half, and the pitches started slowing up a bit. A lot of teams got into the act. And also, it was always going to be difficult. It would be more challenging for some of the franchisees who don't get their, playing 11 correct initially, the first half, which happened with, KKR, Kings 11. Once Kings 11 found out their playing 11, the best playing 11 was a different game. CSK, when they found out they're playing 11, and the change in mindset was different. But I think it was very competitive. I tell you what, I did not miss one game. I did not miss one game. Uh, Whatever the situation was, I was working. Obviously, if I was working, I would have to. But even days when I was not working, I was glued to the television, man. And I think it just brought a different feel when I talk to people. It's not as negative as it was before
Yeah.
before I left for UAE. Before leaving for UAE, I mean, it was quite evident. But now, I don't know, because it's IPL or people have learned to live with the pandemic or whatever. But it's a lot more positive and optimistic, is what I'd say.
Absolutely, because cricket is a way of life for us Indians, and especially in India. And you need to have cricket in the background, whether you're doing stuff, whether you're going to your office, you're sitting in a shop, you're
Chetan,
studying
not
for
just
an
cricket, just
exam. Yeah,
sports. I mean, ISL is on
sports.
now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. ISL is on
Yeah,
now. Yeah,
ISL is on now. I mean, it's brilliant. So I think that's what sport does to you, isn't it? I mean, it just brings so much positivity into everyone's life, and I'm glad that sports is back, and especially in India.
and in fact, ISL is happening inside a bio bubble in Goa. It's happening
Yes.
on the Indian
Yeah.
soil. So perhaps it is the leading point to cricket happening in India, whether we're talking domestic cricket or the IPL, or in fact, there will be a biosecure bubble when England come to India. So a lot of, a lot of cricket coming up, a lot of sport coming up, and probably from an Indian context. So let's move on and talk about the one thing that is always on everybody's mind. It gets underway on Friday, the first ODI, first thing Friday morning. Indian team back in action with the new jersey. What do you think of the new jersey, Deep? 1992, a bit of a throwback, back in dark blue. It was unveiled
Yeah.
yesterday. Shikhar Dhawan with that sneak peek. The new sponsors MPL. What do you make of the jersey?
I think it's nice. I mean, that was the best Indian jersey that I've seen. I mean, the
Yeah,
retro 90, was it the
two,
1992
92
92
World Cup.
World Cup?
Yeah,
Yeah, 92 World Cup jersey. That's the best jersey. I mean, that's my personal choice. But so brilliant. Yeah, and I like it. But it was, I mean, I'm sure it'll look better from far, from what we saw with Shikhar. That was very close up, and I could only see sponsors there. So
yeah. Sponsors are a new
once, yeah,
deal. Yeah, sponsors. You
yeah,
have there. You have to have sponsors on your jersey nowadays. So yeah, it seemed a bit crowded, but
absolutely,
but, but
yes.
I'm looking forward to the whole
Yeah,
ensemble with the dark
yeah.
blue color. I always thought it has a more royal look, more royal
It was
feel.
wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah, more royal feel, and of course
yeah, and,
MPL.
and I don't know. I mean, 90s kids, and we being
Yeah, yeah,
90s
yeah,
kids, we are
yeah,
like, I don't know,
yeah,
this
yeah.
this nostalgic. You know what I'm saying?
Nostalgic, really. And in fact,
Yeah,
if any of MPLs or the manufacturers who are if maybe they are listening and they want some ideas, over the next 2 years, you can explore the '96 World Cup jersey, the 2011
yeah,
World Cup winning
yeah.
jersey, because the next ODI World Cup and the next T20 World Cups, those two World Cups in India. So we can all get more nostalgic and buy some fantastic merchandise. So you know
Yeah.
Deep, nothing gets juices flowing when you see a new kit. Was it something like you, when
Yeah,
you obviously a '90s kid, you played for India, getting that kit, getting that Team
yeah.
India jersey? How does that feel?
Obviously, it was obviously a dream come true. It was a surreal moment, man. I mean, I went to Bombay because we had a 2 day fitness camp before boarding the flight for South Africa, and I checked in the hotel and opened my room, and there it was lying on the bed. The practice t-shirts and everything else, the bag. I still use that bag, by the way. I
Oh
still
yeah,
use that
yeah.
bag. It was what, 2000, 2001. So bag with my name and the logo and everything else, and in an India store of South Africa. Uh, it's just I mean, even now when I pick up those India T-shirt and then an emblem and the cap, it's just so surreal and wonderful. And when I looked at that T-shirt, like you said, when I looked at that picture of Shikhar, that selfie of his, see that India logo with 3 stars on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, so that's huge in itself. And then on top of that, I mean, that 90s t-shirt that, as I mentioned, was like, oh wow. And then your mind jogs back to when everything was was so much simpler back in the early 90s.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I mean, I was still a college going kid, a school going kid at that time, because obviously 90s kid,
Mm.
80s 90s kid. If I remember, it was a light blue jersey for you with a lot of yellow on it, yellow lines. Is that right?
Yeah,
Was that your first jersey? Exactly. So yeah, I mean,
yeah,
even for
yeah,
fans, from a fan's perspective, it's always a connect with the Indian jersey, the new Indian jersey. So just
yeah.
looking forward to how our cricketers, how our gladiators look on the field in that color.
Mm.
Now let's talk about how they would do on this Australian tour? First up, of course, time to get all serious and business like. 3 ODIs. Lots has
Yeah.
changed. The whole scenario has changed. They're practicing inside the bubble. And of course, they're now used to the bubble. The Indian team is now used to the bubble. The Indian cricketers used to the bubble. A lot of debates up here. First up, the big name missing. Actually, a lot of names missing. Rohit Sharma, he won't be playing the white ball series. And in fact, news floating in that he's probably going to miss the first 2 tests if he's at all going to go to Australia.
Yeah.
There's a lot of confusion about his situation. Do you think this could have been handled better by the BCCI?
I don't think could have been handled better, because I think the fact that assessments were different. BCCI's assessment of his injury was different from MI's assessment of his injury. Because obviously BCCI said it's going to be, it's a serious injury, and then he started playing for MI, and that did not help the cause, I guess. So I think I think it just became more complicated the moment he was, fit enough to play for MI. But again, having said that, he should have been on that flight to Australia if there was any chance of him playing even Test match cricket. Because it's going to be very difficult. Chetan, what we have to understand is there is 14 days institutionalized quarantine, right? You've got a reprieve in the sense you've got a special permission to kind of practice and all that. But when you're going there alone, you will have to follow what normally would happen. Who hasn't boarded that flight to Australia to go there separately and go through the whole process? It's not going to be easy. So I have my serious doubts with whether Rohit will at all be part of this series.
And of course, it will be valid for Ishant Sharma as well, who's also, recuperating. But again, from a white ball perspective, Rohit Sharma will be missed at the top of the order. I mean, you mentioned that, okay, BCCI gave their prognosis that it's a tough injury. How much of it is a balance? Because obviously Rohit Sharma is contracted to the Mumbai Indians. He wants to play for Mumbai Indians. How much, how do you find a balance between playing for a franchisee and playing international cricket from an Indian perspective? Where is the balance there? Who makes the final call? Is it with franchisee because the player is with them at that time?
I think, yeah, it's a bit of both. I think it's not black and white per se. I mean, obviously franchisee would want, and we are talking about Rohit Sharma here, one of the best in the world, their captain. So yeah, I mean, you understand why, and you also understand, and it's not that BCCI did not say he wasn't fit for the white ball or this thing. I believe Rohit wanted to take a break, and also he had some personal issues, so he wanted to go back to Mumbai as well. So I think if you put everything together, I think how I see it is he should have been on that flight to Australia, whether he was fit enough to play the ODIs or the T20. Once you're there with the team and you're there with physios and everyone else, because back at home things are different. But when you're with the team, there is a physio there is a trainer there, you have access to the gym, you have access to everything. And obviously the mindset is different when you're there with the team. Your mindset is to recover quickly and get back on the field. At home that might take a little bit longer. So this is how I see it. I honestly, how I see it is he should have been on that flight to Australia even if he had missed the first few games.
Well, it'll be a big miss for India, and this whole saga has left a bit of a sour taste, especially from the fans' perspective, especially from those who are watching from the outside. Because again, there's been a lack of communication. Mumbai Indians never really clarified what sort of injury that was. The BCCI again never really clarifying what sort of injury, what was the extent of injury, what was the extent of monitoring going on. So the messages that were sent out were a bit mixed signals. Most of it you heard was from Saurav Ganguly's point of view as the BCCI president. So perhaps the selectors might have, usually you have the practice of holding press conferences after, picking a team for such a mega tour. That practice did not happen.
The biggest thing, Chetan,
yeah.
The biggest thing is you still don't know whether it was it was the selectors or the BCCI physios who asked him to take a break for the series, or it was Rohit who wanted to take a break. Because I don't know, I'm getting different versions of that.
In fact, Deep, it is still not clarified whether he had a hamstring tear or a hamstring strain, because they are different grade injuries. Absolutely, some people are, the Mumbai camp is saying it was a strain. The BCCI camp it was saying it was a tear. So I mean, these are different injuries, and they need to be handled differently. And of course, somebody like Vridhiman Saha, who had a hamstring tear, He was on the flight to Australia, so why couldn't Rohit have been on that flight? Absolutely valid point there. So, from a cricketing perspective, of course, Rohit will be missed at the top of the order. It means
Oh
a bit
yeah.
of a rejig. You have Shubman Gill and Mayank Agarwal for the ODIs. Mayank Agarwal, great form, probably better, just a bit better than Gill, and partners with Shikhar Dhawan, who also is returning back to the Indian side. He missed the New Zealand tour previously.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen. I mean, the top order batting is fine. I think even one day with Hardik coming back, I think makes a lot of sense, especially in the T20 circuit. ODIs, I think India is there about, as a team, because that is sorted, and Shreyas at 4 has been consistent in one day cricket. So I think one day team is the most, I'd say, balanced as of now. Is the T20 and the Test, which you still have to kind of fine tune and find the right balance.
And in fact, mentioning Hardik Pandya, that was an important factor because somebody like a Shivam Dube, who was part of the ODI squad
Yeah.
for both the South Africa and New Zealand series prior to the lockdown, he's not part of the ODI squad this time around. So that all-rounder angle is covered from Pandya. Obviously, there's a bit of doubt whether he's going to bowl. What did you
Yeah.
make of that he did not bowl at all in the IPL for Mumbai? Was that a precaution,
I,
or he's not fit enough to bowl?
I think they're going to take it easy as far as him bowling is concerned, because I don't think they'll rush him into bowling that early. Because listen, he bowls at 140, right? 135, 140. He's not a slow seam bowler. He's a proper medium pace bowler.
Yeah.
And the kind of action that he has, he needs to kind of remodel his action, make it more biomechanically correct, so that, and that back injury, I mean, we're talking about an operation here. It's not a rehab kind of a thing. It's like a proper operation that he had to undergo. So I think it'll be only fair not to rush him into bowling. Look at all the aspects, his action, his physically how fit he is, because he's wiry. He's not big in terms of build wise. He's wiry, he's strong, he's extremely strong, but then again, bowling as at that pace, and that the kind of action that he actually had in the past would put a lot of stress on him. So I'm not going to rush it, because you still need someone like him to finish off games. That's one area that India has struggled in limited overs cricket, which is power hitting.
That's a great point, Deep. But the problem here is that with Pandya not bowling, is that India have to rely on their
Yeah,
five frontline bowlers. This time they don't have
yeah,
any Kedar Jadhav. They don't have anybody
true.
who can bowl a bit in that top order. Maybe Shreyas Iyer can send down his googlies. I don't know if Virat Kohli will want to bowl again. Mayank Agarwal probably doesn't bowl. So India will have to rely on their
Yeah,
five bowlers. Also, in terms of their spin options, they've picked up Kuldeep Yadav, Yuzvendra Chahal, Ravindra Jadeja. So, are we looking at a possibility of Ravindra Jadeja playing in that all-rounder role along with
yeah.
two other spinners, or we are looking at two spinners, including Jadeja, and also Bhuvi is not there. So, India's bowling mix will be very,
Yeah.
very crucial for this ODI series.
See, that's where I think, a seamer like Shardul Thakur slash Deepak Chahar becomes very important. Somebody who can bat a bit, can get you 20-25 runs coming at number 8. And I think Jadeja definitely is your all-rounder that you're looking for. And I don't see 3 spinners, to be honest. I'd see someone like maybe Yuzi and Jadeja, two spinners. So Jadeja definitely being one, and then you choose between Yuzi and Kuldeep. Yuzi would be my choice as of now. And out of those, 3 seamers, you're looking at, like I said, someone like Deepak Chahar or Shardul Thakur, somebody who can bat at number 8.
And of course, Deepak Chahar is not part of the ODI squad. Just want to remind our listeners, he's not part of the ODI squad. He's part of the T20
So
squad.
yeah, so
And
Shardul is
yeah, so Shardul,
yeah,
Mohammad Shami, Navdeep Saini. Navdeep Saini has come up really, really well. He really impressed in the IPL. People started, or at least
yeah.
I started thinking of him as a potential long-term white ball partner for Jasprit Bumrah. He led the RCB attack really well. What did you make
Yeah.
of him?
I, you know what? I'm very excited to see both him and Siraj with the red ball. I think they're better red ball bowlers than white ball bowler.
Yeah.
And I just have a feeling that maybe we'll end up seeing both of them making their test match debuts on this series. White ball wise, yes, I mean, Siraj and and even Navdeep Saini, I think they will only improve. They are very new in this arena. They've been here for what, 2-3 years now, maybe 2 years now. So they'll only improve, that's for sure. And you can see that improvement. You can, especially with Navdeep Saini, you can see that improvement in his bowling. But there are facets that, the most improved bowler in T20 cricket for me, or even white ball cricket, is Mohammad Shami.
Yeah,
Because we forget that he wasn't a very established white ball bowler in the last 4-5 years. It was red ball cricket, right?
Yeah.
He started off, when he first came into international cricket, it was like white ball, and he was one of the fastest to 50 wickets or something like that. All that was happening, but then again he became red ball, and now he's back to white ball and red ball. So I think the most improved in the last couple of years in white ball bowling is concerned, I think it's Shami.
And I think it'll be an important factor that India needs to manage both Bumrah and Shami in terms of their workload, because they played a full
Yes.
IPL, and going ahead they'll be playing,
Yeah.
or at least leading the ODIs and the T20s. I wouldn't want to play either of them in the ODI, in the T20 series, at least, because yes, you want to win that series, but with Ishant Sharma probably not making it for the first two tests,
Yeah.
these two bowlers become really, really important. So are you in favor of probably, just rotating the two, or probably not even part of the T20 side? I mean, Bumrah, Shami, I don't think he's part of the T20 squad, but at least Bumrah not playing the T20s now. Enough T20 cricket for Bumrah. Just concentrate on tests now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you rightly mentioned was the fact that we were talking about 2 months of IPL cricket before this, and I'm sure they've taken a break of whatever, a week, 10 days, or whatever. But again, I mean, you're talking about bubble, because the other important thing, being part of a bubble, is you got to be mentally fresh, right? You get used to the bubble, but I mean, it's not easy. Having said that, it's not easy. From one bubble to the other, staying away from family. I know a lot of the cricketers have taken their family along with them, but there's still a lot of them who haven't. And to stay mentally fresh for someone like a Bumrah and a Shami, who will be there for the whole tenure of 2 months, is gonna be it's gonna be crazy. So yeah, you have to manage them both physically and mentally.
And in fact, it's not just a jersey which feels like a 92 World Cup trip, because that trip, if you remember, it was the India tour of Australia before leading on to the World Cup. So it was almost like a 5-month trip
The
for
World
the
Cup.
India, for 5-month trip for the
Yeah.
Indian team. So it's similar in this time around as well. They had 2 months or 2.5, 3 months in the UAE playing the IPL, again a bubble, and again most of the players in Australia again in a bubble. So it's not the jersey that's giving us a throwback to the 90s. The pandemic has set us back in those terms, and of course, no traveling journalists this time around. So I should have been in Australia. I usually travel. Let's not put a definitive spin on that, but I usually travel and cover overseas tours. I'm not in Australia. I'm right here in Delhi, but we'll be hearing the Australian perspective, what's happening down under from Bharat Sundaresan, of course, who will be in the second half of this podcast. We're doing a staggered podcast this time because of the timing difference, and of course because he's busy chasing the Indian team and the Indian practice sessions and the Australian practice sessions. I think Australia have gotten together as well. Before we let you go, Deep, just from an ODI perspective, one last question. Virat Kohli, you have to talk about him. He'll be leading the side.
Yeah.
No question mark over the ODI captaincy. We'll come to the T20 captaincy before the T20 series. He hasn't had that great a run with the bat prior to the lockdown. We're talking about ODIs from an ODI perspective. It's been a while since Virat Kohli scored his last ODI 100.
Yeah.
It's important for him to get going. He's there in Australia for a shorter period of time, just a 6 limited overs matches, 2 innings in the day-night test match. His impact on the Indian psyche will be very, very important.
It would be, and it's not that he hasn't been batting well. If you look at the IPL, he's been batting well. He really didn't have the kind of impact that from someone like him on RCB and the IPL. So that's where I think it's going to be important, that the impact, as you mentioned, he will still get runs. He's still got about 460 runs in IPL or 470 runs. So he will get runs. I mean, person of that class, but it's the impact that somebody like him would have, and that's what is important. I think the impact would be important. But let's not forget there's going to be crowd in the stadium as well this time around. So I think it's sold out, all the white ball games except the first one. I guess there's still tickets available if anyone's interested. So having said that, I mean, listen, I just have a feeling Virat is someone who gets going with the crowd around him, the noise, the energy. He feeds
Yeah.
off that energy.
Yeah.
Just my theory. I can be completely off the mark here. It's just that I feel that it affected him, the no crowd situation in the IPL. This is my gut feeling, right? But in Australia, it's going to be different. There'll be crowd, there'll be energy. Obviously, you're playing against Australia and competition or games. So I think don't worry about Virat. He'll be fine. I think he'll be absolutely fine.
Absolutely. And you know what? Saw it on Twitter yesterday that there were some tickets available, and Indian fans in Australia, always one of the more exciting overseas Indian fans. Some of them have paid nearly $200 for near 200 Australian dollars for a ticket to one of those games. Like I said, I'll not be there. Deep is not going to be there. Both of us will be missing that energy of India touring Australia. It's wonderful. Thanks, Deep, for joining us. And obviously, we'll be looking forward to your thoughts ahead of the T20 series.
So,
And of course, a look back at the ODIs. Hopefully, at that point in time, we'll have Bharat together in at the same time. We can find a common ground. But right now, it's the end of the
yeah.
first bit of our episode today. And of course, we'll be leaning into the second bit with Bharat Sundaresan's pearls all the way from Sydney. And it is quite a story how he went from Adelaide to all the way to Sydney. Right, 12 hours later, here we are with the second part of our episode of this current episode of HotSpot, the cricket podcast. And as I mentioned, it's a staggered episode because the timings did not match, with the high-profile personalities like Deep Dasgupta and Bharat Sundaresan. But we finally managed to get hold of Bharat, who is our man on the ground in Australia. In fact, he's man on the ground for every podcast in world cricket at the moment because everybody's getting him. He's getting around quite well. He'll be in demand along with a couple of other colleagues as well. So Bharat, you've had first of all, welcome back to the show. And of course, you've had quite an adventurous ride all the way from Adelaide to Sydney. Describe, what really happened there. Why did you have to get out in the middle of the night and drive to a motel out of South Australia?
Thanks for having me on, Chetan, and good to see that I've retained my place alongside Deep Dasgupta, even though he's not here. So, not a great start for this triad, but
he's here in spirit. He's here in spirit.
I can sense it, and I'm sure we'll figure out our timings at some point. Yeah. So, I did have a very Hollywood experience last week around this time. It is a Wednesday, so basically Adelaide, as I've kept talking about in the last few weeks and months. We were very lucky in Adelaide with the virus really not catching on and things were really normal. And then, that's how it is, right? In all those horror movies, you think that the ghost is gone and it comes back from nowhere. Exactly what happened. Last Monday, we suddenly had a small cluster which started growing. And the way things work in Australia is they just went for a sudden lockdown. So I'm sitting there at home, 1 p.m. last Wednesday, seriously contemplating, jeera khatam ho gaya, jaake le aata hu. I very distinctly remember it was all about jeera. And my wife messages me saying, oh, schools are shut. I was like, wait, throughout this year, you've not had a holiday. What are you saying? And she messaged me we're going into lockdown. And then I quickly checked and they said lockdown from midnight. And lockdown in the sense, the harshest lockdown Australia had seen. You couldn't leave the house, you couldn't go anywhere. So I had to take a call. I said, wow, if I don't leave the state now, I might be stuck here and who knows for how long. So I looked for flight tickets. Of course, there were none, not too many flights leave Adelaide. And the only option left was to rent a car. So my wife comes back at 4. We go to the supermarket, buy some things. And then I'm like, okay, so drop me off at the airport. I'm getting into the rental car. I don't know when I'll be back. Maybe 2 months or maybe 3 weeks, but I'm leaving. And then I just drove, and at 11:50, I drove past the South Australia border into New South Wales to this place called Broken Hill, found a shady motel, spent the night there. And the next day I drove through mud tracks and the outback to reach Sydney at around 3 a.m. on Friday. And what happens? I wake up, I feel very proud, very happy about myself. like around noon, Adelaide say, you know what, there was someone who lied, so we were like lifting the lockdown from tomorrow night. So it was all an anticlimax in the end, but
and
you've
I
known me
here I
long
am,
enough, Chetan.
and here I am sitting thinking, it's tough to get from India to Australia to cover the series, and here you are. It's tough to get from Adelaide to Sydney to cover the
Exactly, yeah.
series. So it just goes to show what sort of an environment or what sort of a situation the world is in right now. Well, it's good that you're there, and you'll be covering the series, eyes and ears of almost every major Indian organization. Obviously, you'll be covering for Cricbuzz, and I'm sure some others will also be leaning on you. And of course, all Indian cricket fans will obviously be following, making a lot of moolah. Yeah, yeah. So
I'm just saying that, yeah, it all there's a price for everything.
there's a price for everything, and especially in these times, obviously there's a big there's a big money at stake, and of course Cricket Australia will vouch for it, $300 million. But you reached Sydney, and since then you've been busy. Tell us what you've seen. I'm sure you've attended a few India's practice sessions, although you haven't been too close like we are supposed to or we are used to. So what have you seen? What have you noticed? How's the Indian team doing? How are they coping with this extraordinary situation? And then, of course, have you seen much of Australia's squad as well?
Well, to be honest, but I reached here on Friday. As I said, they didn't do much on Friday and Saturday. So just before I come to what I have seen, the news from the camp really is like, I've spoken to a bunch of them, top support staff and players. It's really about them wanting to get out and not knowing what kind of freedom they'll get from Friday onwards. And it's still a little bit up in the air. It will still continue to be in a bubble. But they'll have some freedom of movement where they can go, but they'll have to stick to their groups. They can't just venture out wherever they want. They can't get into cabs and Ubers. And so there are a lot of restrictions still in place, but at least they'll not be stuck in their room. So they've just been very anxious to know when the release will happen.
Yeah.
Especially the ones who are here with families. Like, so
Yeah.
Of course, when you have your wife and your kids, like, you just you can't think about yourself, but about them as well. Like, you at least go to the ground to train and come back. They don't even have that luxury. But also in terms of being able to see their practice, Chetan, it was quite ridiculous, I must say, because they are at a ground, and I can't even disclose the location. So it was at an oval, which is covered on all sides by like these deep woods, like bushes. And not only did Gav Joshi and I have to like wade through the bushes, he told me wear pants and shoes. And I don't really listen to that kind of advice, as you know.
Yeah,
but I did
yeah.
thankfully wear pants and shoes when I go there.
Before you go ahead, I would like to tell our listeners and viewers, Bharat Sundaresan, notorious for wearing, slippers and shorts in any and every damn press box in the world, including Lord's. So did you wear pants and shoes this time?
I had to, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. Because if we go there and the bushes were like as tall as as high as my thigh, and they were deep and like dense. So you're just kind of wading through them, and then you're still not done because there was a little slope there. And I posted a picture on Instagram, I think, or maybe on Twitter. So there's like a slope there, and once we reached there, we still could not be seen by the security. So we had to lie down and crawl, and and you're crawling through bushland.
Yeah.
And then once we reached slightly to the top of the slope from where you could see something to the nets, you still had to stay prone. And you could only stay in that position with our aging bodies for not more than 10, 12 minutes at one go. So that's the day India were playing the intra-squad match. So like I'm lying down like that and trying to see what's happening without being spotted by anyone. So luckily, we were fortunate enough to see Mohammad Siraj take 2 quick wickets. This was the 2 days after his father had unfortunately passed away. So it was amazing to see him run in and do well. We saw KL Rahul play a great innings, but after every 10 or 12 minutes, Chetan, we had to kind of crawl down because we were also holding our pose, right? We had to ensure we weren't slipping down. And we did it
like commando-like positions, and
Exactly,
and you're earning your moolah, and you're earning your moolah. You're being made to earn whatever moolah you and Gal Joshi can earn, really. Tell us, go on. I mean, tell us. I mean, is the practice routine pretty much the same, or were you able to? You haven't been able to see enough?
No, we haven't been able to see enough, but I did gather, and I wrote a piece a few days back about the 10 days that they practiced, so they went from just nets where the red ball and white ball team was split into two, and like one was doing nets, the other was doing gym, but out in the open. Like you can't go into the indoor gym because it's closed space and all that. They did that for a couple of days. Then they went ahead and had some center wicket practice. And I think last Wednesday was all about match simulations and where each batsman was given a task to like either bat certain number of overs or to reach a certain score, and bowlers similarly were given tasks to take wickets. So that went on Wednesday, and then a lot of fitness work. And Sunday, like I said, was the culmination with this intra-squad match. The last couple of days they've been doing nets, of course, but what happened after that visit on Sunday is I got a call from a team management official. I won't take his name, and he actually requested me. He begged me, please don't do that again, because the team had been told that the venue, though, I mean, the ball would have never gone outside, like the bush where we were like crawling through and staying prone is filled with brown snakes, and like brown snakes are as poisonous as cobras. So like they bite you, you die.
Yeah.
And he actually told me, I really request you, if you need any information, I'll give you. Don't put your life at risk, because they had been told that if the ball goes there, just forget about it. Just go on with your practice. So yeah, so we've been heeding his advice and not really venture into the bush, but they've not been doing anything strenuous or too eye-catching anyway.
So you are probably the most cricket match journalist along with Gav Joshi in the world right now, because you're literally risking your lives to get some information, and thankful, and obviously everybody is thankful with the way you're doing. And I actually wanted to make this comment because the few times that I've been to Australia and I've just roamed around a bit, taken the sights in, I've been told that you can survive a whole night in New Zealand even if you're living without a tent or a campfire or anything. You'll be alive the next morning. If you try that in Australia, if you make it through the night, that'll be a miracle. So, it's good to see you all safe. So please don't try that again, because there's a lot to be done this summer and lots to talk about this summer. Let's talk about Australia now. We spoke a bit about about India with Deep, but first of all, let's talk about Australia. The squad is looking good. Obviously, they're playing at home. ODIs, not everybody is concerned about ODIs because next up is the T20 World Cup. But again, it gives a window of opportunity. It provides a chance for all of these players to cement their places. Any opportunity is an opportunity, right? So just talk about the squad. Really, what I can see is when I see the lineup, 7 all-rounders. If you take out Manas Labuschagne, who's technically not an all-rounder, even then 6 all-rounders. India have Hardik Pandya and Ravindra Jadeja classified as all-rounders, but Pandya is not going to bowl, is he? So Australia, a plethora of all-rounders. Cameron Green and Daniel Sams, the new names. Do you expect them to play?
I think there was some news report today in Australia that Cameron Green might have to wait his wings. They almost picked him in this one-day squad, more to do with him just getting comfortable around the setup, because he's never been part of an Australian setup before. In the lead up to the test matches, which has been his strongest format so far, or long format against red ball. So I think we might have to wait a while to see Cam Green play. He has an outside chance of playing. Daniel Sams, though, it's a fascinating career. He was here, went and played some cricket in New Zealand, and he's back now, and he's been knocking on the door of the selectors for the last couple of years. He even got an IPL gig with the Delhi Daredevils, as you know. So we might get to see him, but again, you also have to talk about the likes of Sean Abbott, who's had an amazing Sheffield Shield and amazing last few years in domestic cricket with bat and ball. So he would be, I think, right in front of the line if they do want to play someone who can bat and bowl, because you'd expect Marcus Stoinis to play anyway. Glenn Maxwell seems to have finally found his true calling at number 7. So even they might wait their turn, but you'd expect maybe Daniel Sams or Sean Abbott to get the look in the third game, maybe when they try to rest some of their bowlers before the test match. So otherwise, it's a pretty settled setup, and they went and won a series in England. So they're looking good that way.
A couple of questions here, Bharat, from an Australian point of view. Of course, first of all, have you been as close to, or did you risk your life to watch the Australian team practice, or is it just restricted to India?
No, I mean the Australian team is divided into two, right? Like the
Yeah,
IPL guys are, of course, practicing in the
yeah.
same snake-infested oval,
Areas.
uh, but
You didn't risk your life for them.
not really. At least I'm picking my battles. But the other group, which like wasn't at the IPL, they've been at the SCG, but we've not been allowed inside the SCG
Okay.
because they're still even today.
Yeah,
They're just doing, I mean, taking care
yeah.
of cleaning the place and sanitizing the place. So yeah,
Yeah.
I've not been really privy to too much of Australia. So
Yeah. So my questions here twofold. First of all, obviously you have Pat Cummins, Hazelwood, Mitchell Stark. I mean, a hectic series or hectic summer is ahead. Obviously, India also have Bumrah and Shami. There's talk that they might rotate the two bowlers and try and preserve them for the Test series because obviously Ishan Sharma is probably not available. Is
yeah.
that a thought in the Australian camp that okay, we need to preserve this, and that's why they have loaded bowlers in there: Andrew Tye, Sean Abbott, and of course you have the bowling all rounders in there as well. So, is there a thought that okay, we don't want to play all three fast bowlers at the same time?
That's a very, very strong possibility of that happening, even from game one. I spoke earlier that like a Daniel Sams or a Sean Abbott might come in at a later stage, but there is also Moses Enriquez, who's had again a very good start to the Sheffield Shield season. He's come back and he's a proven commodity. Like he's played a lot of seasons of IPL. He's been around the international circuit for a long time. So there's every possibility that they mix and match their bowlers, whether it's from game one or from game three. Because Cummins and Hazelwood have been on the road. I mean, forget about how much they bowled. Hazelwood, of course, didn't play as many games as Cummins did in the IPL. They've been on the road since August.
Yeah.
So they would want. So it's a delicate mix. You don't want them to be too cold in the sense that you want them to keep bowling, but at the same time, it's all about managing workload. So that's going to be a fascinating aspect of how much we see these bowlers rotate, both for India and Australia, like you correctly said. Stark may be the one bowler who plays all of it because he has played a couple of Shield games, but he's had a decent enough break, unlike those two.
And the other question that I want to ask, and probably the last question about the Australian setup, what are they trying to achieve from this ODI series in general? We mentioned that it's all about opportunity, playing for the T20 spot, but there's a larger picture here because it's all about the Test series, isn't it? They lost last time around. They have Steve Smith and David Warner back. They want revenge, and they are obviously the number one side. And of course, the Test series also leads to the World Test Championship. So what are they really looking to get from this ODI series and obviously eventually the T20 series as well?
Firstly, to get a lot of Indians into the stands to get that.
and if I can mention, if I'm reading it right on Twitter, it's absolutely sold out, barring the first game, which will probably also be sold out. And people have paid what $200-300 for tickets, which I would want to tell our listeners and viewers that it's par for course. Every time I visited Australia, that's been the par for what you pay to get in, really.
No, absolutely. But the one thing that you won't see is not banned, but they've said dholes are not going to be allowed. So it won't sound like an Indian crowd without the dhol.
They'll manage. I think they'll manage.
Yeah, I know, I'm sure. Yeah. So I personally am not complaining, but so it's going to be, they're all sold out. So I think it's almost the next step in the return of normalcy. Yes, it's about cricket, and yes, it's about one-day points and T20 squad formation, and also it's about Virat Kohli. Like his little the mini-me Virat Kohli keeps popping up under the Fox tell sign whenever you have the TV on. So it's going to be a lot about Virat Kohli. He's going to be there's going to be a lot of focus, hype around him, considering he's going to be here only for less than a month. So a lot of hype around him. But yeah, I think Chetan, it's really about like people are coming back and the lead up to Christmas more than anything else. Anyway, in an India-Australia series is great, but in 2020 to have that atmosphere just tells you, tells you more about the world. The fact that we're going to have people we've gotten so used to. The other day I was in a Zoom call with don't remember which Aussie cricketer it was. I think it was Glenn Maxwell, and some Australian journalist asked him, like, "Oh, do you remember what it feels like to play in front of crowds?" So that's how bizarre this year has been. The world is right now. But in terms of the cricket itself, like one-day series between India and Australia have been pretty close in the last few years. They seem to play each other a lot. It generally seems to go into the last game, whether it's in India or in Australia. So there will be something to look forward to there. And I guess with the T20I stuff, it's all about next year's T20 World Cup. But again, how much would you look into performances in a format like that on Australian soil? So I think still a long way to go when you think about it. So all of it is just like the entree to what's to come from December 17th when the first test starts in Adelaide.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about the first test and the whole test series and the T20 series in a separate episode. But right now we're talking about the Indian team. If we just take a couple of questions there, Bharat, we were talking about the Rohit Sharma with Deep. He is going to be a big miss. And apart from that, of course, it's going to be about the composition of the Indian bowling. Hardik Pandya, if he's not bowling, then you have just 5 bowlers and you have to get those 50 overs from those 5 overs. It's a situation that India aren't really used to. No Kedar Jadhav, no Shivam Dube. So India are moving ahead. The only way you can have an extra 6th bowler is you play Ravindra Jadeja ahead of, as a bowling all-rounder, if not ahead of anyone else. But, you play him in place of Shivam Dube, or, you can't really go in with 3 spinners on Australian soil. So 5 bowlers for India, they have to do the job. And of course, the missing action, from Rohit Sharma's perspective. So these are the 2 talking points for India, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Look, Hardik Pandya, from what I've heard from the team management, is not expected to bowl. The maximum they see him even bowling at any point is 2 overs. So even in a T20, that might not be good enough if you are picked as the 5th bowler. So
yeah.
So if he comes in, and you would think, considering the form he's in, the way he's been batting, even the other day in the warm-up game, he might not have got too many runs, but just the way he looked, you'd think he is a shoe into that side. So the only place I can see him is at number 6. So like, does that mean Manish Pandey drops out? It would be unfair. He was on and off in New Zealand, but he produced a couple of knocks there. So if Hardik plays at 6, then you have to have Jadeja in at 7. The 3 fast bowlers and Yuzvendra Chahal, that's how I see it, where you have Bumrah, Shami and Navdeep Saini, or Shardul Thakur. We saw both play decent roles in New Zealand. I mean, Navdeep Saini almost pulled off that miraculous run chase in Mount Maunganui, and also answered a Punjabi question for the first time ever in my career.
I was there. I was there. Yeah.
So that's how I see this squad shaping up. Would be unfair on Pandey, but I guess Pandya has to be picked. And Jadeja keeps his place in the side, at least to start with, unless they find some magic formula from somewhere. But like you said, there is no 5th bowler. So for a change, India have a batting lineup where nobody seems to bowl. Unless Virat Kohli suddenly decides.
Yeah, Virat Kohli bowls, Shreyas Iyer bowls, but you would not have them bowl, on Australian pitches. I mean, if Virat Kohli has to bowl, then India might as well say, okay, you know what, we're done in today's game. So that's where we are, and that's where how the series is. That's the way the series is poised. There's a plethora of Australian all-rounders, and there's a dearth of Indian all-rounders. The bowling attack combination for both sides is going to grab headlines, as also is the fact that Virat Kohli is leading the Indian team in Australia in these strange times where getting from India to Australia is almost impossible. Getting from Adelaide to Sydney isn't easy either. Thanks for joining us, Bharat, and hope you have a fantastic time. We'll be watching. It's really fun to get up at 5 a.m. I had lost that charm because I have been traveling to Australia for the last couple of tours, but once again, we'll be waking up early in the morning, wintry Delhi, and watching it on television. Looking forward to international cricket resuming. So wish you all the luck, and stay away from snakes, because we'll have lots more from you. This is the end of this particular episode. Please share it on social media. It's available on all regular platforms, JioSaavn and Spotify and Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube as well. Until next time, we'll be talking about the ODI series and looking ahead to the T20 series with Deep Dasgupta and, of course, Bharat Sundaresan, if he's not bitten by any snakes until then. Till then, take care, stay safe.
Finishes off in style. A magnificent strike into the crowd. India lift the World Cup after 28 years.